Desperate people do desperate things, and desperate teams do desperate things. Yesterday, the Milwaukee Bucks stretch and waive Damian Lillard's contract for Miles Turner. Now, finding a way to waive and come off of Dame's money doesn't seem that desperate. I think we all understand the pressure that they're under with this Giannis clock. But for Miles Turner, who I get it. He's fresh off a finals run. I think that there's a lot of belief that, it was the team around him, Halliburton, the pace, Carlisle, maximizing what he is at this point in his career. And you hear Giannis leaks through Chris Haynes, who I guess is related to his wife. He's upset. He's upset with the Bucks that they waived Dame. Is he? Right? Like you think all these moves are I mean, that just doesn't really add up, right? And Giannis, I think we've kind of come to find has kind of been a phony, at least when it comes to public perception and what he says to the public in the media, which, all right, it's fine. What really matters is that he's not a phony to his friends, families, and teammates, right? So it is what it is. I'm not really buying that. So you want to eat healthier, be in better shape, feel better all around, and you want to stick to it longer than, the first 2 weeks of January every year? Factor. Fresh, never frozen food delivered directly to your doorstep, all dietitian approved. It's created by a team of gourmet chefs using ingredients of integrity. And I've been using Factor for years now. It is the best service of its kind. You've got over 35 meal plans to choose from each week, or 35 different meals, protein plus, chef's choice, smart cow. There's just a lot of different varieties and ways to go about it. And again, it's going to give you the structure to do things. Last night, for instance, living alone now and my meal prep and different things that I try to do, sometimes you go to reach for something, you're like, oh, I'm out of this main ingredient. You don't want to go anywhere. I just reach to a Factor, 2 minutes, no cleanup, no dishes, and I'm good to go. And so it's just been a staple in my lifestyle, my healthy lifestyle, and sustaining it. And so if you want some sort of structure and a way to really kickstart that and sustain it, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code 50alchemy for 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's factor75.com, code 50alchemy for 50% off that first box and free shipping. But to me, if I'm the Bucks, I think we all understand, it doesn't feel like a move that puts them over the top. And we all understand that they're desperate and yada, yada, yada. But if you waive Dame, why don't you wait till the trade deadline and you just free up that space or look for some other move, right? Could you get a De'Aaron Fox if the San Antonio backcourt is crowded, or, it just doesn't feel like something that's going to put them back into contention. Therefore, they're kind of in the same spot that they already were in, where the clock is ticking on Giannis. And look, we won't talk about Giannis to the Warriors right now because, it's a pipe dream that we've been talking about, it feels like, for 5 years, right? Dame, on the other hand, is, people, oh, I feel bad. Like, I think everyone also quickly realized, like, listen, Dame never really wanted to be in Milwaukee. Let's be real, right? It was Miami. It was Miami when he was in Portland. And from day one, he looked, to be honest with you, kind of miserable playing for the Bucks. Him and Giannis weren't the greatest fit. So I'm not buying that nor Dame nor Giannis are upset about this desperate move that the Bucks have made. Again, from Indiana's perspective, Turner maybe on the downside, and you already know that they're not trying to pay the tax, even though they just probably made a ton of money in the finals, and how they can replace him. After getting over the initial shock, I think you kind of get it from Indiana's side as far as like, okay, we can probably slot some younger player in there and he can do 80% of what Turner does at this point in our offense, in our system, when Hallie is right. And so now the bidding war begins for 34-year-old Damian Lillard coming off an Achilles injury. Lakers, interested in everyone. Heat have been the longtime flirtation. Remember, that was the whole Portland-Miami fiasco. and the Golden State Warriors all have tapped in with Dame Lillard. And when you look at the Warriors connection, besides the obvious of being from the town business, right? Dame home, coming back to the team that he grew up rooting for. He's got a connection with Steph. After all those playoff eliminations, it's always been game recognized game with he and Steph and a great mutual respect between the two. He F with Draymond, right? Like he and Draymond are cool. They've always been cool. Again, it's funny because you look at these Western Conference teams that year in and year out, the Warriors knocked out during this run, right? Houston, Portland. Those are the two, I think, probably that we played the most annually. And all the bad blood between the Rockets, there was never bad blood between the Blazers and the Warriors, despite us sweeping them. It felt like no matter the scenario, no matter who was playing, right? So he's cool with Steph, he's cool with Draymond. And then back to the Miami situation that he initially wanted to go to, right? When he was still in Portland, he wanted to go play with Jimmy Butler. So Dame clearly wouldn't mind playing with this Warriors big three. And then you say, oh yeah, come home and get one. It's a pretty appealing case to Dame Lillard, a pretty strong sales pitch that, the Warriors, I imagine Mike Dunleavy, handling this, but hey, I wouldn't be surprised if Steph, Draymond, Jimmy reached out to Dame. But what about it from the Warriors' perspective? Again, 34 years old. The rumor is now, again, take this with a grain of salt, that he could be back before the playoffs start. Maybe, again, I heard someone bring up, Tatum, Halliburton. These guys are in their mid-20s at 34 years old. This is a different injury. This is much more like when it happened to Kobe. But here's what I'll say about Dame. I think his physical strength, how strong he is, combined with his shooting range and just his competitiveness, he's still going to be a 20-point per game scorer. He'll figure it out. He's going to alter his game. Right? He may not command blitzes anymore, right? Where you're like, oh, we got to get the ball out of his hands and he can turn the corner and get up to the rim and have that part of his game. But I think he's competitive enough, strong enough. And again, the shooting, the skill is still going to be there. He'll alter his game and he'll figure it out. In fact, it might even make him more dynamic where he's a more willing passer, right? That's been my knock on Dame. There's been two for me throughout his career. Is one, obviously, the defense. There's been a lot of fake defense from him where it's like, I'm fake hustling. Like if you see him make such an explosive offensive play and then he comes back down on the other end, you're like, you can't get through that screen, Dame? Like that's been my knock. And that may get worse, right? The lateral movement and the willingness and want to do that. But offensively, maybe it makes him a more dynamic playmaker because he can't explode and finish at the rim like we've seen in the past. And he's looking to set up shots for other guys. And then the shooting is not going to leave him. That range is not going to leave him. And so I say all that to say, come home, Dame. Come home. Now, what would the contract be? I have no idea. I mean, he's still going to get paid. I think I read $20 million for the next 3 or 4 years from Milwaukee. So, depending on, he's got a huge Adidas shoe deal, a new shoe coming out, and he's made Dame is inching towards $1 billion probably if we're pocket watching Dame. So I'm not sure that he is going to demand a lot of money because obviously he's not going to play for most of the season. It would be super intriguing, man. It would be super intriguing. Now we would be, we'd still be an older team with a lot of big names, but if he were that third guard to come off the bench and be that scoring pop at a super reasonable deal, I don't know how anybody in Dub Nation could be upset about that. Because what would it, again, we don't know what type of contract it would command, but what would that take away? If we can add him as just kind of like a free swing at the plate and a feel-good story bringing him home, yeah, you do that, right? You do that. And then the other two bits of Warriors news that I think we're all waiting on is, are they going to land Al Horford? And what's going to go on with Jonathan Kuminga? But hypothetically, let's say they do land Horford. So you're looking at Horford at the 5 spot. And if and when that happens, I'll do a complete video dedicated to Al Horford and what he brings to the table. But Al at the 5, Draymond at the 4, Jimmy at the 3. We still are looking at that 2-guard spot. I know Pods held that spot for most of the season. Moses, our draft picks, and then obviously Steph at the 1. Dame as the 6th man coming back off the bench. It got to be healthy at the right time, but you can say that about anybody. The Kuminga situation, it sounds like it's dragging. And the Bulls, the Heat, I don't know who's interested. I've got 2 names that are also restricted free agents: Quentin Grimes and Cam Thomas. 2 shooting guards, right? Quentin Grimes, you want to talk about a breakout season. He was lighting people up at the end of the year for the Sixers. Granted, in a scenario where nothing really mattered. They weren't really playing for anything, and he could just have the ball and play freely. But it looked very much real. He very much looked like a 20-point-per-game scorer, pick-and-roll guard. He's always been a shooter coming out of college. And, I don't know how Philadelphia would view Kuminga, maybe an Embiid connection. I don't know about, but the point would be, the theory would be just a positional change. Not that either of those guys is more talented than Kuminga, but they're a better fit for what we have now, and they fill the void of that starting 2-guard spot. I think you could slot Quentin Grimes. Cam Thomas is undersized to start at the 2-guard, especially along Steph, but he's a young, talented scorer that plays on the perimeter and in the backcourt, which obviously is a better fit right now than trying to jam Kuminga in there between Draymond and Jimmy. So those are just 2 names. I haven't heard any rumors about it, but I'm looking at the free agent list, and I'm like, would those be options as far as a Kuminga sign and trade? But it sounds like, you listen to Slater, the plus-minus boys, it could drag out here a while as we wait on the Al Horford news. Chris Boucher, another stretch big that has been in the Warrior system. Santa Cruz, did he win a MVP in Santa Cruz? Or a championship for the Santa Cruz Warriors? I don't know what he did, but he's been in the organization before, so he's got some system familiarity. But yeah, man, I wouldn't be mad at Dame. I wouldn't be mad at bringing in Dame if it was the right cost. Now, the other report this morning is that the Blazers may want to bring him back as I don't know. You imagine he wants to come back to the West Coast, or that Miami scenario. Maybe, will it come? I think the question is going to be, is it going to be the team that offers him the better contract, or is it going to just be a lifestyle thing and a winning thing, a situational thing? I'm leaning towards that, given how much money he's already earned in his career. I think he's wise enough to make that decision. But when we do find out, and when any of this Warriors news does drop, I'll be right here to talk about it. So hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.